Stating your favorite Final Fantasy character should you have any history with any game in the series isn't necessarily difficult. Ranking them is. What makes a character stand out, no matter how many pixels they possess, is depth. What moments define their journey, what lessons did they learn, and how did they change in the hours we spent together? We don't expect you to agree with this list, but for us, these are the characters we find impossible to forget.
Told ya!
Number 10. Sephiroth.
If this were a sword contest, Sephiroth might find himself on top, but here, he barely cuts in despite some seriously embarrassing anger issues and a flair for the ridiculous. But it's not really his fault. After several betrayals and misunderstandings, Sephiroth finally let his blade do the talking, and few people have been able to quiet him since. He's one of the most indelible and identifiable icons Square has ever created, returning in films, fighting games, and genre crossovers, and his character theme is among the best out of hundreds in the franchise.
Number 9. Cid.
Who the hell is Cid anyway? Ever since Final Fantasy II in 1998, all Roman numeral Final Fantasies included this A-list aviator, and over the years, he's had varying effects on the narrative. Sometimes he's a party member, other times he's just comedic relief, but he's always expected, and anticipation is often the sign of an endearing character. Saying goodbye to Cid would be like forsaking chocobos, Moogles, summons, or Gil. He's a permanent fixture in the series, and sometimes one of our favorite characters in the game.
You lust for the stone's power, do you not?
Number 8. Auron.
If Auron wasn't in our party, we'd be afraid of him. Armed with a massive katana, the Ronin warrior usually only needs one arm to wield it. Banishing Blade remains a favorite attack, where Auron pauses mid-battle to take a drink and slam his sword into the ground to summon ghostly spirits. His words are as sharp as his blade, often encouraging his companions with valuable wisdom. The big payoff comes when you finally realize Auron is an unsent, a spirit who is yet to travel on to the far plane until his mission of redemption is complete.
Number 7. Cecil Harvey.
Baron's Dark Knight was introduced in a time when storytelling in games was still finding its footing, and it's intriguing how Final Fantasy IV went deeper to focus on Cecil's internal conflicts. The game starts as he struggles with the consequences of his actions, and he's demoted for questioning orders. When he tries to make things right, he only finds himself as a pawn in yet another destructive plot. It's his quest to denounce his past self that drives much of the game's story, and his transformation into a paladin also brings a fresh look at new abilities in combat as well.
Number 6. ZACK Fair.
ZACK Fair's a mirror, a yin to the yang, to the storm brewing in Cloud Strife. A first-class soldier, he lives predominantly in Final Fantasy VII's past, one of the safer harbors in the convolution at hand. Perhaps his limited screen time and yin-yang relationship with Cloud kept him as a safe bet, but he took up the mantle of main protagonist in the excellent and overlooked Crisis Core on the PSP to deliver an engaging side story. The Buster Sword is sweet, and we honor the man who wielded it well.
Number 5. RYDIA.
The young girl from Myst holds a special place in many of our hearts, simply because she's the first chance we had to wield the power of a summoner. And how could it get cooler than calling giant monsters to fight on your side? There's more to her character than that, though. Orphaned by the player's own actions, we found ourselves having to protect the girl, placing her in the back of the party to reduce damage. However, after we've parted ways for some time, she surprisingly reappeared, all grown up, protecting us from certain doom.
Number 4. Balthier.
It's arguable that Final Fantasy XII featured one of the least memorable casts in the series. Yet from this dull bunch emerged one of the most popular characters in the franchise, the Sky Pirate Balthier. The dashing rogue has been frequently compared to Han Solo, and his suave looks and witty personality are hard to resist. Balthier has a commanding on-screen presence at all times, and though the game stars Vaughn, and at one point Bosch, it is clear there's a huge focus on this debonair hero.
Number 3. Celeste Cher.
Terra may be the character closest to the thematic core of Final Fantasy VI, but it's Celes whose sense of justice leads her to betray the Empire that's closest to the game's heart. Her voice belts out the part of Maria with all the power and emotion the SNES sound chip could express in the legendary opera scene. When the planet has been torn asunder and the player is introduced to the bleak world of ruin, she cares for the ailing Cid like a daughter. If she fails, she'll attempt to end her life by flinging herself off the cliff. but her inner strength refuses to welcome death. She heals the wounded heart of Locke as he mends hers in turn, and her depth of feeling is well matched by her skill in battle with both spell and blade. Okay, we admit that Runic isn't the most useful ability, but for 16-bit strength and beauty, Cella's is without peer.
Number 2. Vivi Ornithir.
Final Fantasy IX is a game that honors the legacy of the entire Final Fantasy series, and Vivi may be the best example of this. He takes a classic archetype and gives it meaning. While Vivi is often remembered as a lighthearted party member with goofy clothes, his story is one of the most tragic. As a war machine with an expiration date, Vivi doesn't live to see the game's happy epilogue. His inexplicable Vivi babies somehow do. Vivi's character strength comes from his acceptance of both his birth and his impending mortality, and also that he can double cast Flare in trance.
Number 1. KEFKA PALAZZO.
Hear that? You know whose laugh that is. Just hearing the sound of that washed-out chortle, all the memories come flooding back. Memories of a character so unforgettable, gamers worldwide knew the sound of his vocal cords before voice acting ever existed. From the moment KEFKA stepped foot on screen in Final Fantasy VI, you knew there was something not right about him. Much like how Terra and company made the hero's journey throughout the game, KEFKA made his ungodly ascension, rising from a failed Magitech experiment and Imperial mage to become the fallen angel of death. Killing characters? No big deal. KEFKA did that way before Sephiroth. Casually poisoning entire kingdoms and laughing about it afterward? No biggie. Ushering in the apocalypse, resulting in the world of ruin and killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people? KEFKA did that, only to build a monument to non-existence out of trash afterward because he was bored. KEFKA was compelling because he was beyond any sane person's comprehension. He was a pure psychopath. Nihilism made sprite. Simply put, he didn't give a damn. People like him just want to watch the world burn. So now that all of you have heard our list and hate us, let's see which Final Fantasy characters you love. Captain Commando is keeping it old school and says, honestly, what's cooler than a black mage? Atlan went a little more recent and states, Waka. Carefree, beach-loving blitzball dude. What's not to love? Unfortunately for JT 1987, Tactics didn't get a Roman numeral and wasn't up for a vote. I hope Final Fantasy Tactics will not be forgotten in this list. Ramza Beowulf was a great protagonist, faced with problems on all corners. And lastly, Shuckle had a good point. Thanks to time travel, lightning and hope can both occupy the top spot.